Welcome to Muddy River News This Week, furnished by Harvey's. I'm Bob Goff. Chuck Bevelheimer became the city's first city planner in 1994. Former Mayor Chuck Schultz established the position to try to gain some continuity and consistency in the city's zoning laws and zoning regulations. And much like when Tom Landry was the only head coach the Dallas Cowboys had until 1989 when he was fired by Jerry Jones, Chuck Bevelheimer is the only city planner that the city of Quincy has ever had, and he's my guest today. Welcome.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate being here.
So you did take a sabbatical though for a bit in your time, but they never replaced you, so you came back,
Yeah,
right?
Back in 2003, I did leave and go up to Grand Haven, Michigan for about 9-10 months, and end up coming back.
Because that's where you're originally from, up in that area,
that's
right?
Basically my old stomping grounds.
You have outlived lots of folks in City Hall, and you're in one of those positions where you don't make anybody happy. How have you done that?
Well, there probably is a half dozen people who are upset with me at any one time. That probably means I'm doing my job. That's the reality of it, because someone has to step in and say no at some point in time, depending on whether it's a rezoning issue or a variance issue or a petition for this or that. So again, as long as we have a professional approach to the issue and can provide reason and sound planning for why we make decisions, I think, generally speaking, it doesn't mean the council's always going to go the same direction that or the staff is making a recommendation, but at least we put our best information forward, and hopefully that carries the day.
And when you have this process, it's thorough, and you have big ticket items that go through the Plan Commission first and then the City Council. So I think the projects that your department does, they seem pretty well vetted, but although sometimes the Plan Commission and the City Council don't see eye to eye.
The best laid plans does not mean that it's going to carry the day in terms of approval. Having a good planning commission who can speak and vet issues and talk about what the code says and what it doesn't say, and have the public give input and provide insight into their decision making as to why they want to do what they want to do in terms of petition, I think helps provide the necessary evaluation in light of day on a matter to make it presentable to the decision makers, the City Council, to decide which direction to take on any given issue.
And of course, there have been times where you and your staff have said you don't think it's the best idea, but the City Council wants to do it anyway. How do you then proceed?
It's a new day. If the council decides that they don't particularly support a given position that staff has presented, then you know what? That's water off my back. I'm going to go off and keep moving, and I got to work with those same aldermen the next Monday morning at 9 o'clock. I got to be there and do the work and work on the next issue, and I can't start carrying that baggage of that issue with me. We got to keep going forward and not let that hamper our decision making as we go forward.
And when you are in your position, I believe you strive for consistency and trying to make sure there's continuity and uniformity, that while we have an historic downtown, that when things want to get put into this downtown, they look like they should be in the downtown, correct?
Correct. We constantly look at the character of the area, the land use, the existing land use, and try to make sure that our decision making is based on what our plan calls for and what the existing land use can support, as well as the character. Now, it's tough sometimes to do that because of the various issues that come, the interplay of various issues. Plus, you have aldermen with different views. You're never going to get everybody agreeing, rarely 100% on any given one issue. So you have to, hopefully, you've got the 9-10 votes to carry the day on any given issue, and you got to work that. You got to be able to communicate with the alderman ahead of time to tell them what you're thinking, what you're planning, and how this is going to work.
And when you look at these issues as they come down the pike, and especially when you're trying to look at the downtown. Now, the downtown has always been an issue where you're going to have people who are going to say, why we put more money down there? Or you're going to say, we have all these buildings that look empty. But I moved to Quincy in 1990. You've been here since '94. I can say with confidence that downtown Quincy has made many, many strides over those last 30 some odd years.
Absolutely. And I remember in the interview process for this job, when I walked through the downtown, and the media at the time was asking questions about, well, how can we change this vacant, look that we have, that all the shops are closed, and look at the first floors, and we got all these upper story developments, and there's nothing there. We've got to change the current trend in business activity and the business climate in the downtown. And we started off slowly, but we changed the zoning first and foremost. We introduced some loan programs, low interest loan programs, other incentives. We went to a TIF district. We did a couple different planning exercises to get us going in the right direction, and we implemented those. The council back in the 90s seeded the TIF with general fund monies. That's what started out the ability for investments to occur with streetscape projects. We went after a lot of grants. A lot of grants were leveraged with general fund dollars to move projects forward. I think the development of QMG at the east end of the downtown was huge. Obviously, they took up a couple blocks and did a lot for that end of the downtown. I just think it was a matter of a number of projects and you have to have that long-term view. You got to look down the road 20 years with planning. You can't have a 5-year window. It's got to be longer, and I think if you have that view, I think you see progress.
You mentioned QMG, and it's because QMG in that part of the downtown, QMG pays taxes. They're not a non-for-profit.
Absolutely.
They're one of the largest probably property taxpayers in the downtown, correct?
Absolutely.
So, for them to have done what they did, and then you come down to, as you get closer to the river, we sit in a building that was really one of those catalysts, and it rose from the ashes of the fire of the JCPenney building.
Absolutely. And the city at the time, I can remember this building opened back in 1994, and I remember one of those issues we had is after the building got finished, we had a big rain. And we had a lot of water that entered this building because of the design. And I remember the alderman quizzing me at length about how does this happen? How could you get a brand new building and a brand new parking lot? And the building was not evaluated in light of the parking lot. And that was the genesis of us starting a site plan review process where we look at adjacent land uses in relationship to a building project to make sure that one project's not going to impact the other negatively. And that's what happened with the city parking lot project. We ended up, unfortunately, directing a lot of water right into the main center after the first big rain, and we ended up having to go out and refix that issue with a French drain out in front of the parking lot.
And I remember the fire. I was working for WT80 News at the time. I was their news director, and I was covering the fire, and went down and was on the block, and you just saw it just as it was glowing, and there were people who were talking about it and just saying, well, maybe some good will come of this. And it did, because this is a very nice, functional building. We've only been here for a few months, but we know we're going to be here for a few more years. And it's one of those things where you can look at and you can say, okay, that's the way it's built and the way it looks fits into what a downtown should look like.
Absolutely. The fact that it's built at the street building line, at the curb line, or at the sidewalk line adds to the character. It's 2 stories, it has the mass, it provides that enclosure feeling that you expect in a downtown. And that's the trick when you have redevelopments in the downtown, is to make sure you're taking in mind their adjacent properties, the adjacent character of the areas, and how to fit that property in as a good infill development.
And in another downtown fire we had with the Newcomb, which was about 8 years or so ago, and again, I was there and watching it, and it was, oh my gosh, how'd this happen? People also hope for that, and we haven't seen that yet. Why do you think nothing has come up for it? I mean, a very nice grassy field that you can sit in and listen to music when blues is going on, but why do you think we haven't had anything developed there yet? That
property is tight. There's no doubt about it. It's obviously you got an alley at the back end of it, but it's a tight site, and if you're looking for a 2-story or 3-story building, we've always, the council's always said, look, we want a building that's better than average going on that corner. It's a gateway location, and we want to be particular about what's going on in that corner. We're not going to accept any old juice that goes in there, like a gas station or something like that. We want something with character. We want something that's going to bring presence onto the square, and that's what we're trying to do. And I think from what I'm hearing from the alderman, that's what they're looking for in the next project that would occur on that property.
And you know, when you talk about the things, the good things we've seen that have come over the last 30 years, you know, there have also been some hits, like when a Curlin's leaves and things like that. But you know, now you got Will Duryea's purchased that building, and he seems to be, you know, having some good things going on there. And again, when you look around, it's on the square, and some of the businesses that are there, and we've still got a few vacancies there. But Tiramisu coming onto the square had been a very good thing.
Huge impact. Tiramisu moving over from 3rd to 4th Street with that presence on the square, with their parking in the rear, really moved it up a notch in terms of the aesthetic impact and character that it has of a building on the square, and certainly that's going to ripple across the rest of the square.
Another thing that you know, falls under your purview when dealing with this is what the city may do in the future with the riverfront. Although that's going to have to be, it is a joint partnership between the city, the county, and the Park District. And you know, I've been involved in that process in the past. We've all seen the plans. We know it's going to cost a lot of money if and when something happens. Where do you think we are right now? Are we kind of waiting to see what happens with the new bridge? Where's the riverfront at now?
I think if we wait for the new bridge, we're going to wait in a while. So I think we have to go forward with the idea that the bridge is in the works from a planning standpoint. But I think we have to basically marshal our resources. We've got to look to our state and federal legislators to see what abilities they can bring to the table in terms of grants. Certainly we've been very successful in the past with grants and getting projects going forward. We have talked to Congressman LaHood at length about the riverfront and what assistance he can bring to the table, and he's been very supportive. Senator Tracy and Representative Freeze have both been engaging with that. We've had correspondence with Senator Durbin as well. So I think we've got the right momentum in place. It's a matter of getting our governing structure in a spot where we're comfortable with it. Then it's also looking at the fundraising aspect, because the only way this is going to work is we have a private fundraising angle to this fundraising effort, so that we can bring private dollars in to match some of the federal and state assistance we think we can get, as well as TIF dollars.
And the city's also going to have a hand in it too, because you've got to figure out something with the water plant there too.
The water plant is a big issue. Obviously, there's renovations going on right down there as we speak, and how that area gets reconfigured is possibly could open up some more land for redevelopment.
Let's go ahead and move to the other end of town. Of course, the former Quincy Mall, now known as the Quincy Town Center, has got a lot more activity now. You know, there were a lot of people who were, you know, again, the retail that we've lost is not a Quincy thing. It is a national thing. But to try to get some use and some traffic in there, the city worked with Quincy Medical Group and also with Blessing to put the medical presence out there. You know, I know under the Tesca study, we had the health care corridor that was, you know, down on 12th and Broadway. Has the healthcare corridor expanded now? Is it because healthcare itself is just such a big animal?
I think the latter is the matter. Is the truth of the matter. I think with healthcare, it's especially our position in this market for healthcare. We're drawing people from 100, 120 miles out for healthcare purposes, which is a huge trade area, and that's important because I think both QMG and Blessing eye that and know what their market area is and know what the potential is, and they continue to expand their services and their facilities. I think with retail centers like the malls losing their retail abilities with online shopping, it makes perfect sense to turn retail centers into mixed-use centers. And that's what we've been seeing, and that's what Cullinan is trying to do with this facility. We have worked with Cullinan to look at, we developed the Midtown Business District, which added a 1-cent sales tax onto their property voluntarily, put on it by the property owners. We work with Tom Marks along those same lines, who owns the old county market as well as the Sears store. So I think we've got the right momentum there. We're looking at extending the enterprise zone sales tax exemption out there to help them with redevelopment efforts, and that's a process that'll be going forward here in the next 2 or 3 months. So we're trying to put our incentive package in order to make that project successful and allow that transition to occur from a pure retail to more of a mixed use.
But speaking of retail, of course, the big question is, and I joked with former Mayor Moore about it, and it's probably a question I'm going to ask Mayor Trope here the next time we talk. Target, come on, you got to put it somewhere. Where's it going to go?
Well,
I mean, that's one of, I mean, people ask about, I mean, when you put it on social media, it's like clickbait, because people always want to know, are we getting Target? Are we getting Target? Are we getting Target? Are we getting Target?
Bob, I hear about that a lot.
I'll bet.
But with that said, we have had conversations with both the former Shopco building new owners, as well as the folks who own Kmart, about what their plans are for the property, and those plans are progressing.
Good. Well, again, if not something, again, retail is still important, and not all of us just want to sit on our phones and sit on our couches and click. Some of us actually like to go walk through the store from time to time. So, and then we still, when you talk about retail, we've still got the, you got the Prairie Crossing, which is on the other side of 72. And remember that? Well, you remember, of course. It was a big deal to put that in, because
yes,
moving the water and moving the sewer, a lot of aldermen didn't want to do it, but that has kind of been, it's kind of Quincy's retail oasis right now, for lack of a better term. If you're either downtown or you're going to go to Prairie Crossing.
When you start looking at the volume of sales that are occurring out at Kohl's with Dick's, it's pretty substantial, as well as the rest of the retail stores out there. So certainly it was a hard decision to extend water and sewer out on the east side of the interstate, but I think it was the right decision at the time. It certainly offered up a huge opportunity for retail presence in this community. I think it's expanded our trade area, and you can tell that when you drive on the east end of town and start looking at the license plates. Yeah. And it hasn't died off in any sense because of the online shopping. You still see the strong presence of out-of-state shoppers in this market.
Last thing I want to talk about is the mile and a half. People are confused by that. I don't understand it completely a lot of the times. That how does it work where we have our city limits, and then we have the area to the outside, and how does that all work when you're talking about dealing with township governments and such?
Well, it goes back to the fact that the county doesn't have zoning. So when the county has not enacted zoning, and never has, that allows the city, which they did enact a provision in the state code that says if a county does not have zoning, then the city may adopt a mile and a half jurisdiction authority by statute, and we've done that. And that gives us the ability to plan and zone for the area surrounding the city, and it goes out to about a mile and a half. Now, I can tell you what we did years ago is we decided when we expand our city corporate limits that we're not just going to automatically go out and take a whole new farm in. We're going to look at that boundary closely, and we're going to try to make sure that if we're taking real estate in, that we take it under single ownership. So we're not splitting parcels where someone's farm is half in or half out, or someone's property is half in or half out. So we did square it off the best we could to try to make it compatible, but it does certainly gives people pause when they live out in a township and say, no, wait a minute, the city, I'm not in the city, why is the city telling me what I can do with my land use? Well, it's a zoning and planning tool that the state recognized a long time ago. To avoid leapfrog development, cities have to have the ability to control their fringes, and that's what this does.
And I guess that, when you talk about that and the Tri-Township area that surrounds Quincy of Ellington, Riverside, and Melrose, we kind of took a little ding with the last census. And,
Absolutely.
At one time we wanted to get to 50. Now we're just kind of hoping to get back to 40. Is the only way to do that to just have the Tri-Townships come on in and we hit 50?
That would help, but I say that, I think there's also, you have to evaluate the level of service that we can provide. To provide service beyond the city's corporate limits means more staffing, larger budgets, and you're going to have to evaluate that, and there's going to have to be a cost-benefit analysis of what you're bringing in versus the amount of services you have to provide.
Yeah, it's not just a one-step process,
that's
for sure. So, well, Chuck, thank you for your time.
Bob, enjoyed it.
All right. That's all the time we have now for Muddy River News this week, furnished by Harvey's. I'm Bob Goff. Have a great week.